Hello, college football fans. Welcome to episode 64 of College Football Throwdown. I am your co-host, Alex Schmitz, and today I'm joined by my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Hello, college football fans and Husker fans who are still with us.
That's right. Well,
Who are still on the boat.
Yeah, those who have stayed with us, who are persevering like we are.
That's right.
So this is episode 64 of College Football Throwdown, a college football podcast by college football fans for college football fans. And we are here today to discuss the Nebraska Northwestern game, as well as all of the crazy upsets that happened in Week 7 of general college football and what's coming up in the next week. Before we get into that, I believe you have the beverage to crack this week, Dad?
I do, and I'll try to see if you guys can even hear this, but this week it's a bottle, not a can. I'm drinking Dos Equis Lager Especial. One of my favorite beers from my years in Mexico, and always look forward to it when I can get one of these to drink. So there you go. I don't even know if you heard that. You probably just heard a little clink.
We heard it, but you should remember to pause your words so we can get the full effect.
How about that?
All right, that works. All right, so we'll start with the Northwestern game, and
let's do that.
Our good old scores predictions. So we had quite similar scores, but reversed, where you predicted that this is where we were going to turn the corner and get our first W, and so you predicted a 35-31 victory, and I reversed that score, said it would be close, but that we couldn't quite pull together, and Northwestern would win 35-31, with the final score being 31-34. We were scarily close there, and it turns out we were both kind of right, because we were the better team this week, but we also were not good enough to win in the end. So
right.
I don't know what to make of that.
Right. Well, it is one of those things. I mean, we again had every opportunity to win that football game, should have won that football game, and then enough mistakes were made by the coaches, by the players, and frankly by the refs to allow that to move from a fairly sure victory to a defeat, and that's part of learning how to win a football game. And in a conference like the Big Ten, where you've got pretty much across the board talented coaches, good coaching going on, and in coaching staffs and players that generally are coached to play for 60 minutes. They're not going to stop trying. And if you're in a tight match, you can't lose your head and start making bonehead decisions and bonehead mistakes right at the end, thinking that somehow you're going to pull out the magic formula. You do what brought you there. And right now, since nothing has brought us across the finish line, we don't know what that brought you there is. And we're still trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't get it. And it's frustrating because I'm seeing more and more, and I don't know whether it's the coaches, just the coaches are as human as the players are and as we are as fans. And so I think they're reaching, they're grasping for trying to find something that'll help the team make that play, make those final plays they need to make to lead to victory. And in so doing, I think they take themselves out of the game a little bit. And in this game probably was the best example of that, where I feel like the coaching at the end of the game probably accelerated our demise. We lost it rather than it being won by Northwestern.
Right. Yeah. Well, so to give a little context, I watched the game on TV throughout the first three quarters and into the fourth quarter. I think when I left, we were up. We just scored again, so we were up by 10. And I had a chiropractor appointment, but I was listening to it through my iPhone on the radio, and then I requested that the chiropractor let me listen to it during the session, which he kindly allowed, though it may not have been the best decision for my health to keep my body tense as I waited for that release of, the Huskers won, the time expires, instead we go 3 and out and they get the ball back and I'm like, oh boy, here it comes, and sure enough, they tie up the game, and I listen to them beat us while I'm getting my back worked on. So that was kind of ironic in a way.
It was.
Yes, but yeah, and I was just listening to it, obviously, so I didn't get to see the plays on the field or some of those penalties that started kind of coming in at the end. I know you said some of them were kind of bogus, but we had noted in an earlier game, I believe it was the Colorado game or one of the first two games, that in that game as well, I believe we were up and we needed to just run the clock in the fourth quarter, and we were unable to do that effectively. And that's a flaw I think we can point to in Scott's game plan or his coaching philosophy of offense, is that when it comes to the end and you want to slow down and grind clock and just get a first down, that's what's most important. Just chunk it, get it first downs, run the clock, run the ball. We were unable to do that. And we 3-and-out it against them when a single first down could have won us the game just through, 2.5 minutes were left on the clock or whatever it was.
Right. And there's a few reasons for that. One is that, it's the first year of the system. And so, Scott Frost and his staff have to put a premium on just simply trying to teach their system. So they don't have the time to really dive into the details. When this coaching system has been in place for 3 or 4 years, and you now have a bunch of guys who are playing that are 3 and 4 year players, even some of them 5-year players, and other guys. So then you're just spot playing a few young guys in amongst primarily an older group that has multiple years of knowledge of the culture and the expectations and what makes up and constitutes effective play for their system. Then some of these details will work themselves out, or at least that's Scott's philosophy. I'm sure that's his belief. That's his coach's belief. But I am of the belief that system needs to include one series of plays that they have for these circumstances, and that series is going to be a deviation from their standard system, much like a team that is a power team, let's say a Wisconsin or a Michigan, has a 2-minute offense in which they have far more of a spread type of system with 5 receivers and that sort of stuff that they use to try to go and score fast, right? Empty sets in the backfield, et cetera, et cetera. If they make that switch and can do that effectively, and good teams do that, then I believe we need to have that system as well and have a small series under center. Now, ironically, we did show an under center snap in this game for the first time, or one of the rare times, let's say, I don't remember every snap of this season, but it's got to be one of just a few snaps we've had all year from under center. And of course, the snap was botched. Our quarterback fumbled it. And ironically, our running back was able to recover the fumble, keep his balance, make a guy miss, dive forward, and get a first down anyway, which is one of the most successful fourth down plays we've had all season, I think, was a fumble snap.
It was a third down play. It was 3rd and 1.
Okay, it's a third down, but still, I mean, it was a critical, 3rd and short, 4th and short, whatever. But you get my point, that it ended up being a net success, even though it was a disaster from an execution standpoint. Mm-hmm. But we need to be able to do that. And then ironically, we go to an even more critical snap at the end of the game, and then of course, our center, who's supposed to be snapping to a shotgun, which we do every play, and he throws it in between his legs, rolling on the ground. It's just inexplicable to me how those things happen at the worst possible times. And I think part of it is that we are not built to line up with a power set with multiple tight ends who can line up and just outnumber blockers. When you need a first down like that, and when Wisconsin needs a first down like that, even if you as a defensive team load the box, oftentimes they're still able to get that first down because they can overpower you. They can match all these extra guys you bring into the box with big, strong, powerful tight ends who can match the blocking prowess of whatever you are attacking with, right? And because they still, in those situations, have to at least reasonably respect that there could be a play action pass involved because you've established the running game enough and the play action enough that teams have to respect it. When Nebraska does that, well, number one, they don't do it, and so we haven't been able to see them effectively do that. Right? They need something like that, some version of that allows them to get the first downs. You can't line up and say, well, just because I've had a good, powerful running back who's had a lot of yards like Ozigbo did in this game, when it's the fourth quarter and the other team has to get a stop, they are going to attack. And you've got to be able to take everything they're going to bring at you and still have the gumption and the go to get that, 4 or 5 yards. Instead, in that series, we ran the ball 3 times, but with weak, to the side plays because we can't line up and run straight at somebody with a fullback because we don't have that in our playbook. Well, you better have some things that are going to work. I don't know what those are in his system, but he's better develop them, and he better develop them fast because otherwise, the only way we're going to win a game is if we can blow somebody out where there is no doubt the outcome is already resolved by the, early in the fourth quarter. Because if we ever get in another close game, guess what's going to happen? These same kinds of things are going to come and rear their ugly head again until we demonstrate that we have execution in place to overcome it. And right now we don't have that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did think it was an interesting game in that we, in terms of penalties, we were, kind of doing better. I think we were at like 5 for 50, for a good chunk of the game. And then near the end, we started, it kind of piled back on. So it ended up being 9 penalties for 89 yards, while Northwestern had 1, which was like 1 false start near the end of the game.
Yeah. How can you throw the ball 64 times and not have 1 holding penalty, which Northwestern did? They threw the ball like 64, 65 times, and they did not get called for holding once. And yet we weren't able to ever put pressure on them, even when we blitzed. You're telling me we never, even when we were doing twists and stunts and blitzes and bringing extra guys, never once did their guys hold? Seriously?
Right. Well, there were a couple times we did get a couple sacks and got some pressure on him a couple times. But in general, yes, I get what you're saying. But Northwestern is kind of, we always say they're just a well-coached team. They don't make mistakes. That's kind of their MO. But
right.
They did make some mistakes. We missed a field goal. They missed a field goal. We had an interception, return for a touchdown. We didn't get that from them, but we did get some interceptions on key drives where they were moving it, and
they had some dropped passes too.
Yes,
they made mistakes. They made plenty of mistakes for us to win.
Right.
They did not play that well. That you're right about that, Alex. You're absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, they gave us enough opportunities to win that football game.
Yeah. Well, and on the rushing side of things, they had 23 attempts for 32 yards. So we were able to shut that down pretty good when they went for it. Though when they were able to pass the ball 65 times, complete it 41 times for 455 yards on you, they don't really need to run it when they can do that to you.
Well. And even in that, I mean, if you break down further, and I don't have the exact breakdowns, but the number of 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 10s, 4th and 10s, and that final drive where they drove 99 yards to get the tying score, we had them 4th and 10 twice, and gave it up both times.
Yep, that's true.
You just can't do that and win football games. I mean, you could have ended the game on either one of those plays if our defense, but again, defensive blitzes where our twist guys are running into each other and or they're way late and they're not even affecting the quarterback's throw or their lines of vision or their passing lanes. They are completely inept in what they're trying to do. And I felt like, again, don't know this for a fact because I have not taken the time to watch the video, 3 or 4 times through to see and verify that, because I think my wife would disown me if I watched it again because I was so furious when I watched it the first time. But I really, it would be wise if I was going to tell you the specifics. But I'm confident in my first view of it that there were definitely some decisions by our defensive staff late in that game that are peculiar. That
Mm-hmm.
where all of a sudden, where we were playing some zone and keeping guys in front of us and tackling guys right after they caught the ball. I mean, early in the game, I was so pleased because we were running some zone and their receivers would get a crossing pattern and they'd catch a ball and then man, they'd be tackled as soon as they caught the ball. You know what? And those kinds of game, that kind of approach can work. Even though you're not getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback, if you're able to keep that quarterback in the pocket, because occasionally there was some breakdowns on their side, and we did get some pressure on that quarterback. But all of a sudden, it just seemed like in that fourth quarter, when we were trying to stop them, we were running these blitzes and doing this weird stuff, and it never got home. And if your blitzes aren't going to get home, don't blitz. Go ahead and do your standard defense, and at least you give your players more of a comfort level because they're doing the basic stuff, and you're more likely to have your alignment and your assignment proper.
Right.
As it was, then we'd have an alignment or an assignment breakdown, and they'd throw to a wide open receiver.
Yeah, I have 2 points to add here. One, it should be noted that on that particular Saturday, when you were angry at this game, it was also your wife's birthday. So that was a factor in that situation.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
number two, I will say that, once again, I didn't see the game, but I was listening to it, and I was impressed that they were basically on our goal line, very close to it, on the previous series, and we managed to stop them and force them to kick a field goal there, which certainly pleased me, and that put us up. Well, okay, we're still up by 7 instead of only being up by 3. This
Right.
gives us more confidence. And then one positive to take out of the game was this new punter. I forget his name, but
Yes.
he had some,
Armstrong.
Right, he had a new Armstrong instead of Tommy Armstrong. But
Yes.
he had some solid punts, especially that one near the end where we pinned him on the 1 yard line, which was obviously a great position that we immediately ruined with the penalty on roughing the
Right.
passer that we got after
which
that.
which I think was a totally bogus call.
Right.
Our guy hit him in the chest and happened to have his hand up in the air because it's what he's taught to do to try to block a pass, but he hit him in the chest and his other hand touched the helmet.
Mhm.
Touched it. Did not hit it. He touched it because his hand was in the motion of trying to block a pass.
Mhm.
It's just to me, referees have to be able to use some judgment about the difference between a solid hit and somebody who's attacking the face and the you know what I mean. There's got to be the ability to judge that.
Right.
And right now,
Well,
because it's a point of emphasis, they just are encouraged to throw the flag immediately.
Right. Well, and you'll recall there was a play earlier in the first half where Martinez went for a run, like got a first down, and then slid, and one of their
Right.
guys was kind of going in around the same time. And
Yep.
I was a little iffy on it at first, but then I watched the replay and I was like, no, actually, this is correct because the Northwestern guy was doing what he was supposed to do. He was going low in for the tackle before
Yep.
Martinez dropped. And then Martinez dropped, and they didn't have like direct head-to-head contact, but it was kind of close.
Right.
It could be a little late,
close.
It was a little iffy. But
Right.
the way I would like the sport to be kind of played and to be a little more hands-off by the refs, I was glad that that was not called. However, then for that call that we were just discussing late in the game on Northwestern's quarterback, if you're going to be calling the game tight like that, then you should be consistent, and they should have thrown the flag on the guy when he hit Martinez earlier.
Exactly. No, I'm with you, and that's the way I would like to see the game get called too. I really would. These other ticky-tack things that they keep calling, and Boodle got called for some pass interference penalties. That again, it's a technique thing where he has to understand that he's got to turn around. He's doing everything else right, and he's right there with his guy. But if you don't get that head turned around, the referees are going to call it.
Yeah,
it's just the way it is. I hate that rule, but that's the rule.
Yeah, and I feel bad for him because he's had some great plays this year, and people have kind of targeted or I don't know if it's targeting him or if he's just been assigned to some of their better receivers and he's had some good knockdowns and stuff. But at the same time, there have been a number of interferences and stuff too. So he's getting there, but it's a technique thing. Now let's talk about some positives here because there were positives. We rushed it 47 times for 231 yards, passed it 250 for 251 yards, and a good completion percentage as well. 35 attempts, 25 completions, 2 interceptions, one of those being right at the end of the game when it didn't really matter. And Ozigbo ran it 22 times for 159 yards, so another good game for him. I was happy to see some of his, hard-earned, just he runs with effort, it feels like, on almost every play, and that's been a consistent thing about him throughout his career, which I just love. And I texted you during the game that, and maybe this was jinxing it or whatever, but I said, well, we were up. Even if we lose this game, I'm seeing lots of market improvement just from last week against Wisconsin. We had some more success on offense. We had a great first drive to immediately score. Our defense was 3-and-outing them pretty consistently, and we gave them 7 points through a pick six. So if they didn't get that, they would have only had like 7 points there in the first half.
Scott Frost brought that up in his press conference today. That up until whatever it was, 8 minutes or 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, realistically our defense had only given up like 7 or 10 points. I mean, our defense had played really well until the very end of the game. So you could say that we played a very good game for 3.5 quarters.
Right. And although once again, some of those, there were drives they were having that were looking successful, and then they made a mistake, like a drop pass or an interception.
Correct.
Which was the defense making a play, getting a pick. So that is also credit to the defense. But, it was a combination of mistakes by Northwestern as well. Us missing the PAT was really bad. But then we did get the 2-point conversion later on to kind of lessen that. But kicking remains a definite concern for the team, and the missed field goal, obviously. But looking on the positive side, we were clearly playing better in this game. We were up, and I saw more cohesion. It seemed like the offense kind of knew what they were doing more. Martinez made some good reads where, it was a pass RPO and he, ran it, when they had spread out and got a first down and things of that nature. So lots to like as well, but it's almost more painful to lose when it looked like you were going to win than to lose in a blowout.
Absolutely,
it's rough.
I mean, when you don't deserve to win, it's actually a little easier for you to arrive at the conclusion to accept it, or the reason to accept it. But when you play like we did this weekend, and then we piss down our legs at the end and give it away, that's a problem, and that's something that's really, really hard for me to accept. And so I do not hold the coaches exclusively responsible for this outcome. I don't hold the players exclusively. I think that is an absolutely complete team shared defeat. They all were a little bit responsible, and they have to look at each other and say, hey, we just got to keep working at it, keep getting better. And again, Coach Frost, I'm almost sick of hearing it, but he's like, hey, these guys continue to respond. They keep working to get better. He said this is the best Monday that we've had. We keep getting better, and it's going to pay off. And he's just like, he's appealing through the media, I think, to Husker fans and to his own team through the media to just hang in there, keep working hard. It's going to come. It's going to come. And ironically, as we maybe look to next week a little bit, is that we're actually the favorite in Vegas, which blows me away. We are 0-6, and Minnesota is coming off a game against Ohio State in which they were competitive with Ohio State, and I believe the game was at Ohio State, and they were competitive with Ohio State for 2.5 quarters, and they were still within striking distance. Um, and I just can't fathom why, the Vegas odds makers or anybody would make us a favorite, and we're like a 4 or 3 point favorite right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say we're a favorite, but I would put us as the loser, I guess, in the game, but not by a lot. Because I think you could look at the teams we've played against, like Colorado and Akron. Colorado just lost their first game this week
Right.
against USC.
Yep.
They were ranked. What were they ranked? They were, I don't know. They were ranked in
In
like
the
the
top 20.
yeah, yeah. So we've played close games against some legit opponents and lost, and then we've gotten just
Right.
totally blown out against other opponents. So you know, um, but yeah, the fact that like we said last week, now this is unfortunately a historic season, the first 0-6 start to a season in Nebraska history.
Mm-hmm.
So not the best start that we wanted for the Scott Frost era. And my last kind of question about the game for you, just as a curiosity, is: do you think that Scott made the right decision by going for it on 4th and 1 there in overtime versus just kicking the field goal?
That's a great question. Okay, so when it was 4th down and 1, I would say yes. I agreed with his decision, but then we got the didn't we get a procedure penalty
No, well, it was 3rd and 1, and we got pushed back,
pushed
and then
back?
and then we
That's what
basically
it
got
was.
back to being really close
Yeah.
to the first down marker, and it was 4th and 1.
Okay. And so in that situation, I understand what he was trying to do. And they had a series that they were planning to run in the overtime, and he was wanting to finish this thing off. And so, we had been fairly successful offensively, both running and throwing. So I get it. I get why he went for the but I don't I don't even know what the play call was because of the snap, but it appears that it was a pass play, which if they hadn't had the bad snap and it had been a pass play, if it was not a run pass option for the quarterback, I hate the call. I'm sorry, I just do. I think kicking the 3 point, uh, um, given what our defense had just done and giving up 99 yards, I think I think that in all likelihood Northwestern would have been able to find a way to grind out first downs against us, and then scored a touchdown. So I understand why he felt it was so important to get 7 there instead of just settling for the 3. Plus, his field goal kicker had already missed an extra point and a field goal earlier in the game. So I think it was a combination of our field goal kicker not having the coach's confidence, and him believing in himself and his own offense and what they had been able to do that day, all factored into him going for it on 4th down. Now, once the bad snap happens, well, then you screwed it up, and it is what it is.
Right.
But that's sad.
Yep, and I think everything you just said makes sense. Though it wasn't that long of a field goal, so I probably would have still gone
He
for it just to.
missed a PAT.
Well, yeah, that's
Nothing better and easier than that. A PAT is right in the middle of the field, right smack in the middle. It is the chip shot of all chip shots, and you just missed one of those. So, uh, I don't know. I don't know where that kicker's head is.
no, yeah, I would agree. We were talking about how you must do good in practice, but not on game day. It seems to be
Right.
one of
I
those
mean, he's
type of
just got him
players.
right. Exactly. Well, you hope that confidence comes. He'll just keep grinding, keep working, and all of a sudden he'll start making those. That's what you've got to hope. But you're also recruiting your ass off to get a new kicker.
Yeah,
That's what I hope they're doing. I'm
yeah,
hoping
or
that's one of our recruits this year, whether he's a walk on or a scholarship, is 1-6. I'd say do both. I
yeah,
think they probably need to expend a scholarship on a kicker, if they can get the right one, one of the top 3 or 4 in the country, or they need to scour the Midwest for a walk-on kicker who has demonstrated the ability at some small little high school out in the middle of the panhandle or something that no one else knows about. and get that walk on in there and let him work on it.
Yep. We've had history with good walk-on kickers in the past, so we'll see
Exactly.
about that. All right, so moving on to the Week 7 games in the wider college football sphere. We previewed the Michigan-Wisconsin game as our other prediction last week
Yes.
because that was so big for the Big Ten. And we both predicted Michigan victory. You said 45-28, while I said 35-17. With the final score ended up being 38-13. So a little
Ooh, you
bit.
were close.
I was close-ish. That was a little bit further apart than either of us predicted. Michigan just, I think as we kind of had predicted, Wisconsin's injuries to their secondary was an issue, as well as Horny Brooks not being the greatest passer. I think those were
Yep.
the two big factors.
Yeah, Wisconsin just isn't nearly as good as Michigan this year. I mean, that's just a fact. That's why Michigan blew our doors off, and why we were relatively competitive. I mean, you go back to that Nebraska Wisconsin game, and even though they had a huge advantage over us, offensive line and defensive line, we still were able to find a way to make things interesting in that game, to where a couple of things go our way, and we're in that game probably into the fourth quarter with them,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think we're even close to that with Michigan when Michigan's playing, well, adequate. I mean, I have no explanation for why Michigan played the way they did against Northwestern, other than the fact that they kind of were mailing it in, which they have a tendency to do.
Yep.
As does Ohio State. I mean, it's just like we'll eventually get to the Ohio State game too, but.
Yeah, well, speaking of
struggles.
Speaking of that, this ended up being an upset, but it could have been was Florida versus Vanderbilt. Florida ended up winning 37-27, but I remember they were showing highlights of it during our game, and Vanderbilt was up in the first half rather, and it looked like Florida was just sleepwalking on the field. They clearly were not respecting the quality of their opponent that day.
Exactly, and yet they were able to click it into gear and then turn it around and were able to pull out the victory, and that's what good teams do. That's kind of like Ohio State and Minnesota. You would have expected, given both teams' resumes going into the game and the fact that it was, I believe, at Ohio State, you would have expected Ohio State to win that game comfortably, and instead they let Minnesota have some success early, probably because Ohio State wasn't the sharpest as they could be, and then Minnesota embraced that success, and then all of a sudden they became a much more difficult out for Ohio State, and that's what happens to teams who don't show up to play.
Right. Well, I think this week was just a great example of kind of the craziness of college football, because you have Florida, who just beat LSU last week, nearly gets upset by Vanderbilt. And then it's LSU, who lost to Florida last week, comes in and their defense has a great game against Georgia, and they end up upsetting the number 2 team in the country 36-16.
Right.
And then you have a similar situation with MSU, who lost last week, coming in and beating Penn State. It's just funny how that works.
It is. You got to realize you're still talking about young people who have all kinds of stuff going on in their lives, school, family, girlfriends, just all kinds of crap going on in their lives. And so from one week to another, you don't know what kind of focus level you're going to get from those young athletes, and just the or how serious are they taking their preparation and their opponent. Did they watch as much film as they usually do, or did they decide to watch a little less this week because it was only Michigan State, so why we're going to win this one, and then voila, Penn State finds themselves in a dogfight.
Yeah. Although I think anybody who underestimates Mark D'Antonio is dumb, because
well, that's true. Maybe that's a bad analogy, but maybe the Ohio State Michigan or Minnesota game would be a better example.
Well, yes, that would be a better example. I would agree with that. But what's interesting about that is obviously it paves Alabama's way even more to being the clear, number 1 in the SEC, and now Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, and Notre Dame are the main big teams that are still undefeated.
Right. And I think the remainder of Notre Dame's schedule is pretty manageable. I mean, they've already played a lot of teams that people believed were going to be challenges for him. Now, I believe they still have a couple of games left that could be interesting,
Uh,
but
I just pulled up their schedule. They play against Northwestern, who we were just talking about. Florida
right.
State,
And what do you think?
Syracuse, USC.
Okay. Yeah. And USC's good. They obviously just beat Colorado, but they've also lost a few games. And
Yeah,
and Northwestern, although they beat Michigan State, they should have lost to us, and we're an 0-16. We're the worst team we've been in 129 years. So that tells you where we're at and where Northwestern's at.
ah,
Northwestern is a solid team with a lot of flaws.
right.
So,
Yeah, so
well coached, but lots of flaws.
right.
Notre
So
Dame should whitewash them.
yeah, so yeah, all very winnable games for Notre Dame certainly, which would
Yeah.
put them in an interesting spot for the college football
Oh,
playoff.
well, I can pretty much guarantee you that if they go undefeated, even though they don't play in a conference championship game, they will be one of the four.
Yeah, well,
Especially since there's only four undefeated teams left. If they go undefeated, they're in.
yeah, I think you're right for sure. And if Notre Dame played a bunch of good teams earlier in the year, so if they win out, I'd say they deserve it. And they've been close in the past too, so this would be a good change for them to finally get into the championship. And since you brought up Nebraska and Northwestern earlier, that reminds me of a thing I saw on Reddit. Somebody was talking about where they were kind of just postulating why we're 0-6 right now, even though Mike Riley had this basically the same group of kids last year. We managed to win 4 games, and how is it that like the start of the Scott Frost era is this bad, basically? And one thing somebody brought up was not only did we lose a lot of good seniors last year, but also those teams that Mike Riley beat were not of the same quality of the teams we played this year, like Arkansas State and some of those other teams. And even those ones that we won were not pretty wins. A lot of them were close. We beat Purdue by 1 point. So they were just kind of bring up, like this schedule is tougher. Scott Frost is implementing a new system. We lost talent, and we have a bunch of people leave, because they can't stick with the system. So we're lacking in depth even more than in the past years. So it's kind of a combination of things.
Right, exactly. And so the bottom line is that when you start trying to do that comparative stuff, you know what? I'm so tired of talking about the Mike Riley era or the Bo Pelini era or any of that stuff. At this point, we just need to focus on us and what we're going to do going forward. And I don't care whether a player was recruited by, Riley or Frost. That stuff is irrelevant. At this point, all the kids that are there are committed to being Nebraska football players now, and they are committed to the University of Nebraska. And we've got to stop defining them and putting that label on them. We just got to call them Nebraska football players and recognize that to this extent that some of them still don't know how to win. I use the phrase China doll to describe their psyche, and that's really where we're at. We're at a juncture where our guys simply have not experienced enough winning to know what they need to do to win. And I know that sounds like a flaky excuse of some kind, but there's so much truth in it. If you've ever played sports, you recognize that when you're in a tight game, okay, these issues don't come up if one or the other side is winning big. It is what it is in those circumstances. But when it's in doubt and it's still a contested sport or game, then there is a way to complete that, and it gets back to people making plays because they have the confidence because they've done it before. And now we have so much losing in our recent past that our guys need to relearn how to win. And before it was all about all the things we were doing wrong. And I believe last week is a game in which it was about learning how to win. And we lost this game because we do not yet know how to win.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it happens this week. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
Yep. I think what you said there makes sense, and I do think that this was, we were talking about how Northwestern kind of has to be a turning point, and it may not have been a turning point in the exact way we wanted, with a nice W to our name, but I think that the improvement that was made and shown, we can look at the film and the players can take some encouragement from that, and hopefully, if we keep taking that kind of a step, game to game, obviously we're going to still get crushed by Ohio State. But I think that the W will come if we continue to do that. And like we said before, we got to look at improvement, not wins and losses at this point in the season. All right. So getting back to some of those Week 7 games, we talked about LSU, Georgia a little bit. LSU won 36-16. MSU, Penn State. MSU won 21-17 over Penn State. And then we have Notre Dame, who we were just talking about, nearly lost to Pitt 19-14, but they ended up winning. So another, the better team kind of isn't taking it as seriously, but they managed to win through sheer talent by the end kind of situation. This is a pretty shocking one. West Virginia, who was ranked 6th in the AP poll, lost 14-30 to Iowa State. So I think Iowa State, didn't they beat somebody else earlier in the year too?
Well, no, that they lost to Iowa, and I think they were like 2-3. I mean, yes, they had won some games, but I don't think they had necessarily been light and fire. I think they had been competitive against somebody. I don't know whether it was Texas or one a Big 12 school.
Yeah.
But and they were expected to be competitive this year. But based on their start and how great West Virginia had looked, I mean, West Virginia's quarterback was right in the thick of the Heisman race.
Right. Looking, I just Googled their schedule. They beat Oklahoma State. So I knew that there was something. They played close against TCU. They were only 10 points behind Oklahoma. So yes, they've had some close games this year as well. We talk about Florida Vanderbilt. Miami lost to Virginia 16-13. They were ranked number 16, so their kind of struggles continued. I know this was a year they were looking to kind of break out. Yeah.
That one was probably one of the bigger shocks to me. Some of these that you mentioned, Pittsburgh and Notre Dame being a tight game didn't necessarily shock me because I know Pittsburgh had played some pretty good football, and this was a game in which it makes sense that maybe Notre Dame struggled a little bit, and even the LSU rebound, although not one I would have predicted, doesn't shock me. Now, Miami losing to a Virginia team that I think is very average is a shocker to me because I really thought this would be the beginning of a turnaround season for Miami, that this is where all of a sudden Clemson would start to have to look at not only Miami but and Virginia Tech, but an improving Florida State team and some other ACC teams to really step up, and yet it hasn't happened. I mean, none of those teams have stepped up to really challenge. And of course, then we got the odd duck of Syracuse, giving Clemson everything they got.
Right. Although last year, you'll recall, Miami was, looking like they would be in playoff contention there, and they upset.
Absolutely.
Then they upset Notre Dame when Notre Dame was undefeated, and then they lost the next week after their big win, and they kind of fell out of the national relevance after that. But they had a good season last year.
They did. They did, and you would, and so people had high optimism for this year because they're very talented. I mean, their coach, who was previously the Georgia coach, Mark Richt, has been one thing his whole career, and that is a great recruiter. And he's back at Miami. He had been offensive coordinator there when he was a younger coach. And so, it's only a matter of time kind of thing with that program before they're going to be right in the thick of the national championship hunt again, just like he was when he was the head coach at Georgia. But this year is a little bit of a head scratcher given what I was expecting.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We mentioned that Colorado beat or finally had their first loss this past week. They were ranked 19th in the AP poll, and they lost to USC, which traditionally wouldn't be too surprising considering how talented we always know USC is. So that one doesn't shock me too much. And then
Right.
Washington and Oregon seems like they had a good game, went into overtime, and Oregon beat Washington 30-27. So another game between rivals within their
A lot of people were
conference.
very a lot of people were very high on Washington. I really like Washington's coach, but I feel like Oregon is already amassing talent that will match and even exceed Washington's talent level, and so it'll be interesting to see how things evolve over the next 3 or 4 years in the Pac-12 as USC gets its bearings under it with their new coach, and then you have a Stanford program that's pretty established, and you have now an Oregon program that's reemerging, especially with the recruiting that they're doing, and then you have a Washington program that has been a consistent, a Final Four, type of team for these last couple of years. Will they be able to continue to recruit at a level that keeps them there? And that's the question I have. I mean, I don't question Chris Peterson's coaching acumen at all, but I do wonder if he will be able to recruit with the big boys. And we'll see. I know he hired some staff that are phenomenal recruiters, and they've been doing a very good job. But now they've got a whole nother level of competition here with this guy at Oregon. So
Yep.
it'll be interesting to see.
It will be interesting to see. And then lastly, the upset week that we had this past week, we have Tennessee upsetting Auburn 30-24.
Mm-hmm.
So another kind of surprise in the SEC, kind of spoiling. I know Auburn had already lost earlier this year, but another kind of disappointing loss for them.
Right. Well, and a big win for Tennessee, given the fact that they had a. This is another example of how they kind of landed on their feet after a debacle of a coaching search and hire last year. Now there was a lot of discussion after they decided to change coaches, and their coaching hiring process was ridiculed substantially. But they seem to have landed on a guy that's pretty good, and seems to be getting it together right at the right time. Now, hopefully, that's an indication of where Nebraska's headed as well. That we're headed for a victory here very soon, and maybe an upset of an unexpected kind later this season. Not going to be going to bowl games. Not going to be winning conference divisions or anything like that. But let's start showing some more signs of progress towards a better tomorrow in future years.
Yep. And it's funny you just mentioning that. I do distinctly remember that whole controversy around the Tennessee coaching and everything, and that was a big news story on all the sports talk shows for weeks last year. But now it just it's like such old news. You know how fast the news cycle goes. Like I
Exactly.
had kind of forgot about it until you just brought it up. So
Exactly. Well, it's just like people talk of, and this is where Scott Frost's being front and center in a lot of conversation, not just in Nebraska but across the country, because he was the hot coaching hire last year. If because of the year that he's having this year, I guarantee you his flame will not be burning nearly as bright after this season, and there will not be the glow of commentary and optimism from national pundits about Nebraska, because they're going to have too much data in front of them that says Scott's got a bigger talent challenge than he thought, in that whole deal.
yeah,
So it'll be good. I think it's kind of good for us to get out of that limelight and just let him go to work.
yeah, I would agree. Obviously, I wouldn't. I would prefer that an 0-6 start to the season isn't what we had to go through to get that. But I do think the Frost Mania thing wasn't necessarily healthy for the program in general or the fan base. So I'm kind of glad that that's died down a bit. Now looking ahead to week 8, there are some big games, not too many crazy ones. A big rivalry within our home state, Michigan versus Michigan State, classic rivalry. Do you know where that's being played? Which stadium?
I believe that is at Michigan State.
Okay, that's interesting. You know, you can certainly never count Michigan State out, even though I would definitely say uh, Michigan looks like the better team this year. Um, let's see. Yeah, it says Michigan State versus Michigan, so it is at MSU. You're correct about that.
Yep.
So that's interesting.
Yep.
So the home field advantage would give me better odds at saying I think MSU will definitely make it close. I think it'll be
You know,
tight.
they are always those games are always tight, and they always rise to the occasion. And in recent years, it seems like if somebody hasn't, it's been Michigan that hasn't. That Michigan's the one that's kind of choked a little bit rather than Michigan State. But if you look a little deeper beyond the wins and losses, and you remember that Michigan State won on the totally fluky play with the whole punt screw up that led to a score on the last play and flipped the victory for Michigan State. I just feel like I think this is again, since I've been saying early in the year, this is Michigan's year to show their wares, and I think that they're settling in now. The season's half over, and I think they are not feeling the stress and the pressure that they felt maybe earlier in the year, and they've already gotten through a couple of big games like the Wisconsin game last week. So I just feel like Michigan's the team here. I think they go on the road and beat Spartans
Right.
because Sparty's been very inconsistent.
That's true. They've been inconsistent this year, and I think I saw somebody saying that this win over Wisconsin. Now, as we said last week, this is kind of a bit of a weakened Wisconsin because of all their injuries and stuff. And this isn't their best team this year, but still beating Wisconsin by 25 points is no easy feat. And they were calling this like one of the most impressive wins of the Harbaugh era. So it does seem like they are on an upward trajectory at the moment. So it could turn into a blowout. You never know. But like you say, the rivalry game always seems to bring a lot of competition and close games out of both teams.
Right. Yep, I agree. But I think Michigan wins it in a close one.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get to our prediction for that one a little later because I think that's obviously one we have investment in. Colorado plays Washington after Washington's loss. So that'll be interesting, and actually after Colorado's loss too.
Yeah.
And then Mississippi State plays LSU in the SEC. We have Oregon playing Washington State, and then Clemson playing NC State, which I believe is notable because NC State is currently ranked 16th in the AP poll, and they're undefeated, though I don't believe they've played many teams of note, but being undefeated at this point of the season is still impressive.
Yes. Wow. Yeah, that will be interesting. And that Colorado, that's too bad for Colorado, having Washington come off of a loss. I think Washington's going to be a little more focused and a little angry when they play that game.
Probably. Let's see here. I'm looking at NC State's schedule here just because I was curious. That's right. Oh, they had a game against West Virginia that was canceled, probably due to some of the weather. And then they did beat Virginia. They beat Boston College. But, yeah, they haven't played too many teams of note because of that cancellation. So this will be a test for them, I guess, to prove if they're the real deal or not against Clemson.
There you go. Yep.
And then, of course, we have Nebraska's game against Minnesota, who, like you said, just played a competitive game against Ohio State. And I believe it's at Minnesota or is it at Lincoln?
Nope, it's in Lincoln.
It is in Lincoln.
Yep, I was scheduled to go, but thanks to some things that I can't control, like the weather, I'm not going to be able to make it.
That's right. So I want to, I think this is going to be kind of like last week where I want to be able to predict that we're going to turn around and we're going to win this week. But until I see the proof of it on the field, I just can't bring myself to say it anymore, unfortunately.
I understand. I get the same sense, and it gets back to that thing of saying they need to learn how to win, and they just haven't done it yet.
Yep. Well, what is your prediction on score then for this game?
For the Minnesota game? Well, I'll tell you what. maybe I'm going, maybe I'm leading with my heart too much, but I do believe this is the week. I believe we do get it done here, and there's some advantage maybe to having this event happen for this season for a home game for the fans for the student section for everybody. The weather's going to be kind of middling, 50-ish degree weather. I don't know whether there's a rain in the forecast or not, but it's not going to be great weather, but it's not going to be horrible either, I don't think. And I feel like we keep learning a little bit each week. I think Minnesota probably put an awful lot of energy and effort into that Ohio State game, and to come out of there having given a good showing, they're going to feel good about themselves and where they're headed. But they're also going to be a little bit beat up and maybe a little drained physically and emotionally because of all the energy they spent. And so they're going to come into this game, I believe, thinking that they can beat us. And so we need a fast start like we did last time, and then we'll be able to sustain it all the way to the end, and we get our first victory. But I think it's going to be a close game. It wouldn't shock me if we lost. It wouldn't shock me if we lost big. I don't think we win big. I think I would be shocked if we won big. I think it'll be a close game that we win after maybe building a little bit of a lead and then holding on this time versus last week against Northwestern. So similar game, probably
So you're thinking
like a 35-31 Nebraska.
All right, so you're going with your same one from last week.
Yep.
It's going to be it this time. I think I'm going to say I'm going to predict a loss. I'm going to say 28 Nebraska, 31 Minnesota. I also think it's going to be close. I think it being a home game will give us a bit of a boost. But I don't know. Because I was predicting earlier in the season, like when you were predicting a loss, I was predicting a win. I was trying to be positive, but the positivity has been beat out of me a little bit. And looking ahead, I was just looking at our schedule. So after this, we play against Bethune-Cookman, the makeup game for our lost game at the first week of the year. And I do feel like, if we lose that game, that will really be a problem. Right. But, we're looking at, kind of a realistic, like, best case scenario at this point is like a 3-9 season for Nebraska. If we beat Minnesota, Bethune-Cookman, and Illinois, then lost to Ohio State, Michigan State, and Iowa.
Right.
And it could be 2 or 1 win or 0 wins. Nothing is certain at this point. Right. Even kind of the best case realistic scenario is looking pretty rough for us.
I would agree, but I just feel like Minnesota's offensive style lends itself to our defense a little bit more than maybe some other teams have, and I think we match up personnel wise pretty decently against them. They have some talent, but I think we're competitive in that talent. So I think we pull it off this week, and I would agree with you. A three victory season, maybe we squeeze out a 4th victory if we do continue to have improvement and we don't get so beat up at Ohio State that they take out 3 or 4 more players that lose the rest of their season because of injuries or something. Mm-hmm. Which is my big fear is that we're going to go into the Ohio State game and we're going to get manhandled like we did at Michigan. It's just going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah. I would predict that if I was a betting man in Vegas for sure.
Right.
It seems rough, but there's not much we can do about that. That's just a better team situation.
That's right.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the Michigan State-Michigan game. This is our other prediction.
Yes.
I think we were both leaning towards Michigan, but thinking it'll be close.
Correct.
I'm going to go ahead and predict first here. I'll predict that Michigan wins, and it's going to be a high-scoring game, dramatic. So I'm going to say, I'll say 42 Michigan to 35 Michigan State. It's go with that.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I'm going to say it's lower scoring. It's a Michigan victory. And I'm going to say it's going to be like 31-17 Michigan.
All right, a little bit more decisive, you think?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think.
I think it'll be late. I think what's going to happen is that at some point Michigan State will start taking chances, and then Michigan will get a late cheap score that'll end up making that final score.
Yeah, certainly could happen. All right, cool. Well, I think this is the end of this week's podcast, episode 64 of College Football Throwdown. If you enjoyed listening, you can email us at huskerpete13@gmail.com. You can find us online at footballthrowdown.podomatic.com. You can search for us on iTunes at College Football Throwdown. You can leave us a rating or review there. You can also leave comments on Podomatic if you like. We always like hearing back from the fans. So thank you all out there for listening. Thank you for co-hosting with me today, Dad. And until next week, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.